They said we were children. That's what the Galactic Council called us when they first welcomed Earth into their shining empire of stars. Children. Curious, chaotic, clever, but ultimately harmless. We were their pet project. The youngest species to join their sacred fold. So young, in fact, they didn't even bother to offer us a vote. No power, no say. Just smiles, data sharing, and treaties written in a dozen languages we didn't understand. At first, we were grateful, overwhelmed by the gift of knowledge. Hyperspace lanes, gravity tech, medical nanites that eradicated cancer in a week. These were miracles. To us, the Council was salvation. But we were naive, desperate, blind to the way their eyes never truly saw us as equals. And then came the war. It wasn't ours. It started in the outer belt, between the Ralveth and the Drell. Two ancient species with 1,000 years of hate between them. Their blood feud reignited, and suddenly stars were going dark, worlds burning, refugees flooding every sector, and Earth was asked to help. We did. Against every warning, we stepped in. Not with fleets or firepower, we didn't have much then, but with resolve, with stubbornness, with that damnable human thing the Council never understood: sacrifice. Our diplomats brokered ceasefires. Our medics tended to Drell and Ralveth alike. Our freighters delivered aid through contested war zones, shields barely holding. And when things escalated, when the war spilled into the core systems and the Council's own planets were threatened, we sent our fleets. Not because we were asked, not because we were ready, but because no one else would. We lost half our navy in the opening month. But the Council survived. Because of us. And when it was over, when the Drell homeworld was glassed and the Ralveth were shattered into diaspora, we didn't ask for praise, not even reparations. We asked for a seat, not as children, not as guests, as equals. The vote was held in secret. We only found out the result when the broadcast leaked 2 weeks later. A unanimous decision, 12 races, 12 votes. Earth denied. Not enough cultural maturity, they said. Too impulsive, too emotional, too dangerous. Dangerous. That word lit a fuse in every heart back home. They used us, let us bleed for them, die for them. And when the war was done and the galaxy was safe again, they tossed us back to the kiddie table. I remember the riots, cities erupting not just in anger, but grief. Parents screamed into empty skies for the sons and daughters who wouldn't come home. Veterans burned their uniforms in the streets. And amidst it all, one message echoed louder than all the rest: never again. The shift happened slowly at first. Budget reallocations, quiet construction yards in Mars' orbit, dark projects resurrected beneath Luna's surface. The Council watched, of course. They always did. But they underestimated how good we'd become at hiding things. They thought our rage would fade. They thought wrong. The man watching the Council's broadcast in a dim, war-scarred room knew exactly how wrong they were. General Torin Vex didn't blink as the Council's high arbiter droned on in that oily, patronizing tone. Speaking of galactic harmony and necessary containment protocols, his knuckles tightened around the glass in his hand. Bourbon, imported from Earth. The last batch, probably. The blockade had seen to that. Containment, huh? They'd sealed Earth behind trade walls, sanctioned every human-aligned colony, and declared us a developmental threat to interstellar peace. To hell with them. Behind Torin, the holomap of the sector glowed red. Human fleets, once scattered and underpowered, were now moving in calculated silence. Tight formations, black ops squadrons, weapons that had never seen the light of day. He turned as a younger officer entered the room. "Sir, transmission from the Titan. Admiral Reyes confirms position at Enceladus. All ships cloaked and ready." Torin nodded. "And the signal?" Prepped. Send it. The officer hesitated. That's a point of no return, sir. Torin stared at the screen again. The council chamber filled with smug, scaled, feathered faces. They crossed that point when they betrayed us, he said. Let's show them what dangerous really means. The officer saluted, turned, and vanished into the corridor. And far across the void, a dozen human ships powered up weapons no council species had ever seen. Technology born not from peace, but from rage, from betrayal, from the promise that humanity would never be someone else's pawn again. There was a time when humanity dreamed of the stars with wide-eyed wonder. That time was over. Enceladus was silent beneath its icy shell. The council knew little about what lay beneath that frost, only that it was one of Saturn's moons, and of minor strategic value. That ignorance had been carefully cultivated over years. While the galaxy dismissed Earth as emotionally unstable and technologically erratic, humanity had been repurposing forgotten corners of its system into war factories and listening posts. Admiral Reyes stood aboard the ISS Titan, a dreadnought-class ship designed in secret, forged in the cold crucible of betrayal. Its hull shimmered with Grav reflective plating, a human invention the Council had called theoretical nonsense. And yet here it was, real, cloaked, and armed with weapons calibrated to dismantle Council shielding algorithms. "Signal sent," came the voice of her tactical officer, softly, reverently. Reyes didn't smile. She simply looked at the holofeed. The Council was still talking, still unaware. "This isn't a declaration of war," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. "It's the consequence of arrogance." Around her, her crew stood silent. Each one had lost someone, a sibling, a parent, a lover. None of them served out of duty anymore. They served out of memory. They served because the Council had looked them in the eyes and called their sacrifice a mistake. Engines igniting, weapons warming. She gave the order with no hesitation. "Fire!" 3 Council ships blinked off the galactic grid in less than 6 seconds. No warning, no demands, no ceremony, just erasure. The explosion was felt in every system relay. Alarms blared across Council stations. The High Arbiter's speech was cut short by distant sirens and sudden chaos. On Earth, the footage hit within minutes, and instead of fear, it brought something different. A release. Screens across the globe lit up with breaking headlines. "Humanity strikes back. No more chains. The first salvo." Some cheered. Others wept. But no one was silent. The Council convened an emergency summit within the hour. 12 species, 12 voices shouting over one another, accusations, demands, panic. They activated the peacekeepers, called in the elder fleets. But it was too late for control. The myth had shattered. The myth that humans could be tamed. Back on Earth, buried under the old mountain ranges of Colorado, the real war room thrummed with energy. General Torin Vex watched the chaos unfold on the main screen, arms crossed, face stone. "We shouldn't have waited this long," said Director Nyla Varin, head of the Interstellar Intelligence Network. Her voice was sharp, brittle with years of bitterness. "We gave them everything, Torin. They spat in our face and called it diplomacy." "We weren't ready," Torin replied quietly. "We are now." He didn't deny it. The Council had relied too long on a single assumption, that humans were fractured, unpredictable, emotional. They were right. But what they never understood was that emotion doesn't make us weak. It makes us relentless. Out in the frontier systems, humanity's hidden allies emerged. Colonies once claimed as rogue outposts were now beacons of resistance. Old Council client species, oppressed, overlooked, began to whisper of rebellion. They remembered the humans who'd fought for them during the war, the medics who crossed fire lines, the engineers who rebuilt what the Council refused to touch. And now, humanity had become something more than a species, a symbol, not of peace, not of order, but of reckoning. The Council responded the only way they knew how, with fear. A blockade around Seoul, sanctions that froze trade, seized assets, imprisoned human ambassadors, and then came the ultimatum: disarm or face annihilation. The message came encoded in a format from Earth's first year in the Council, like a slap across the face. Torin read the text once, then deleted it. "Tell them," he said to the comms officer, "that we already faced annihilation, and we survived. And if they don't listen," Torin met her gaze, "then they'll learn something new." In a distant corridor of Council space, a fleet of unmarked ships exited slipspace. Their IDs didn't register. Their tech didn't match any known configuration, because it wasn't Council-made. It was human, built in secret, fueled by anger. Crew trained in simulations based on the Council's own war logs, leaked, stolen, decrypted over years of watching and waiting. The lead ship sent a message to the Council defense array guarding the outer ring. "We remember your betrayal." And then the array exploded. The galaxy had thought humans were impulsive, but the truth was far worse. Humans were patient. They didn't just want war. They wanted the Council to feel it, the way they had felt forgotten, dismissed, and used. And the rage? It had only just begun. The Council still didn't understand. Even after the outer defense ring fell, even after 3 colonies defected overnight, even after their fleets encountered human vessels with cloaking fields that shouldn't exist, and weapons that burned through shields like paper. They didn't understand. Because the Council had never been afraid before. They had crushed rebellions, quelled insurgents, silenced dissent. But they had never fought an enemy who knew them. That was humanity's secret weapon. Not the tech, not the ships, the memory. We had studied them. All of them. Every tactical doctrine, every psychological weakness, every ego-driven blind spot. For decades we played nice, nodding along, pretending to be grateful. All while recording, analyzing, preparing. The betrayal had simply accelerated the clock. And now, the galaxy was burning with the knowledge that the smallest child at the table had teeth. Deep inside the Archeon Spire, Council headquarters on the core world of Verith, the High Arbiter watched the reports scroll in with growing horror. Unknown vessels near the Tracian moons. Refinery destroyed in the Urian system. Council patrol fleet obliterated. No survivors. He had never seen the Council chambers so quiet. The Drell ambassador was shaking, translucent fingers tapping against his armrest. "This is not war, it's execution." "They've hacked our long-range comms," said the Vael Shari representative, her tone trembling. "They're intercepting fleet orders before we even give them." "It's impossible," someone muttered. But it wasn't. Because for the first time, the Council wasn't fighting a fringe uprising. They were fighting humanity with a plan. On the bridge of the ISS Titan, Admiral Reyes stared at a star map that was no longer theoretical. Each marked point had been a Council foothold a week ago. Now those systems were silent, occupied, or ash. She traced a gloved finger across the next target. "This one hurts," she muttered. "Borealis Station." Her XO, Captain Hurst, raised an eyebrow. "Old science outpost?" Number It was where they signed the treaty, the one that made us a protectorate instead of a partner. Hurst nodded slowly. Symbolic strike, then. Reyes clenched her jaw. Number It's a message. And she gave the order. Back on Earth, protests had turned to parades. Humanity wasn't hiding anymore. Monuments were going up, names etched into obsidian slabs, lit by eternal fire. Not generals, not leaders, fallen medics, aid workers, young soldiers who volunteered for peacekeeping and came home in boxes while the council smiled and said nothing. General Torin Vex stood at the base of the newest memorial, flanked by diplomats and former colonists. His face was tired, grizzled, and lined with the weight of a war that wasn't declared, but had always been coming. A reporter pushed through the crowd. "General, how far will humanity go?" He looked her in the eye. "As far as they made us." In the shadows beyond the galactic rim, not every species was mourning the Council's fall. The Ashari Syndicate, black market kings of the void, watched from their asteroid fortresses, amused. "About damn time," they said. The Grith, nomads scattered across unclaimed space, whispered tales around their campfires of Earth's burning rage, and smiled. Finally, someone was standing up to the gods, and within the ranks of the Council itself, cracks began to form. A junior delegate from the Ralveth Confederacy leaked confidential documents, proof that Earth had been sabotaged during the war, that their fleets were sent into unwinnable battles to shield Council worlds, that their losses were intentional. The file went viral. The galaxy turned. Torin Vex sat alone in his office when the news hit. He didn't cheer, didn't smirk. He just closed his eyes. "They're finally seeing it," said a voice behind him. It was Nyla Varen, the spy master. "They're seeing what we saw," Torin said. "Too late." Nyla stepped forward, dropping a fresh report on his desk. "The Borealis strike succeeded. Council has pulled back from the inner belt. They're rattled, starting to eat their own." He looked up. "And?" She hesitated. "They're calling for a peace summit." Silence. Then Torin laughed, short, bitter. "Now they want to talk." But humanity wasn't the same species that had begged for a seat at the table. Now, we built our own table, out of steel, blood, and memory. And if the Council wanted peace, they'd have to sit at our table. And listen. Really listen. To every scream, every cry, every voice they silenced when they thought we were nothing. Because this wasn't just vengeance, it was justice, and we had only just begun collecting the debt. The Peace Summit was held in the Caltheris Drift, a dead zone in neutral space, far from any Council stronghold or human fleet. It was symbolic, a place without allegiance, a void untouched by blood or banners. A fitting grave for old illusions. The Council sent 7 envoys, not 12, not even 10. Some had gone silent. Others were too afraid to leave their fortified systems. And of course, Earth sent no one. Not at first. For 3 days, the Council envoys waited, postured, issued empty communiques laced with diplomatic poetry and veiled threats. And then, on the 4th day, the lights dimmed across the drift. One by one, the stars around the station flickered. Not out of failure. Cloaking fields. Dozens of human ships emerged from the black like ghosts, surrounding the station in complete silence. No weapons charged, no shots fired. But the message was clear. We see you. We're here. You're not in control. They arrived aboard a single cruiser. The Resolve, sleek and scarred, its hull bearing the emblems of every human faction, military, civilian, colonial. At its helm was a woman the galaxy hadn't seen before, Ambassador Helena Voss, young, quiet, deadly calm. She wore no insignia, no medals, just black, a memorial in motion. When she entered the Council chamber, no guards stopped her. They didn't dare. She sat, folded her hands, and waited. The silence was suffocating. The High Arbiter, voice shaky, finally spoke. "Ambassador Voss, we are grateful for your presence." Her gaze was ice. "No, you're afraid of it. Humanity has made its anger clear. But if we are to avoid further bloodshed..." "You mean your blood." He hesitated, She leaned forward. Let's be honest, shall we? You didn't come here to make peace. You came to beg for control. You want to leash us again. Wrap your decrees in flowery language and call it order. But it's too late for that. Humanity's actions threaten galactic stability. You mean your stability? The room was still. The other envoys didn't speak. Some looked away. You called us children, she whispered. But the truth is, you never wanted us to grow, because you knew what would happen when we did. She stood. Now you're living it. The summit collapsed within the hour. No treaty, no agreement, only fear. And in the shadows of the drift, as the resolve departed, a message pinged across secure council channels, not from Helena, from Earth, encrypted, final. You don't get to erase what we remember. You don't get to define who we become. Elsewhere, the war deepened. Council strongholds were overwhelmed not just by human fleets, but by defections. Whole battalions of lesser species, once loyal to the Council, now changed sides. They fought under a new banner, the Terran Accord. Not just humans, not anymore. It was an alliance of the betrayed. And the Council? It fractured. The Kelton withdrew entirely, citing internal unrest. The Ralveth signed a non-aggression pact with the Accord. And the Veilshari leadership? Assassinated from within. A new faction rose, waving the Terran sigil in their cities. The Council's power wasn't just waning, it was collapsing. But victory breeds its own poison. General Torin Vex sat in his war room, staring at casualty reports. Not Council losses, ours. A failed assault on Arva Prime. Civilian deaths, entire colonies destabilized. Some humans, drunk on vengeance, had gone too far. Rogue captains, vigilante fleets. They weren't fighting for justice anymore. They were hunting. Torin turned to Nyla Varen, her face grim. We're losing control of our own people, she nodded. Some don't want justice, they want dominance. He stood slowly, spine heavy with guilt. That's not what we started. But it might be what we become. And far across the galaxy, in a chamber sealed in shadow, a new council formed. Not of the old guard, not of the cowards and opportunists, but of something worse. The survivors, the manipulators, the ones who had always seen humans as a threat, and now had the proof to rally others behind that fear. They began to plan. And this time, it wouldn't be containment. It would be eradication. Humanity had always feared the dark. Now it had become it. The Terran Accord was spreading faster than anyone expected. Not through conquest, at least not at first. Through hope, through whispers carried across trade routes and pirate bands, through smugglers and refugees and broken soldiers. Worlds that had once feared Earth now looked to it as a salvation from the rot. But not everyone in the Accord believed in mercy. Captain Juno Thane of the rogue vessel Crucible didn't care for treaties or codes. She'd lost her sister at the Battle of Garl, ordered to hold position as a council fleet, mistakenly opened fire. They called it miscommunication. She called it a massacre. And now she was done waiting for permission. The Crucible had raised 3 former council outposts in the last week. No survivors, no prisoners. Torin Vex had sent recall orders. Juno ignored them. The Accord's signal didn't reach her anymore, because the deeper this war went, the more it fractured. Some wanted justice, others wanted revenge, and only blood would satisfy them. Admiral Reyes watched the internal briefing in silence. Rogue captains, civilian casualties, retaliations spiraling out of control. She had once believed in clarity. Now the line between right and wrong was buried under ashes. "We're turning into them," whispered her XO. Reyes shook her head, slow. They never felt remorse. We still do. Do we? He asked. The silence that followed was longer than it should have been. Back in the drift, Helena Voss received a secret message from a place that shouldn't have existed anymore. Galen Prime. A council black site, one humanity believed destroyed in the betrayal, but someone had survived. And what they sent changed everything. Video logs, recordings, genetic samples, proof that the council hadn't just lied about the war, they'd used humanity, modified human test subjects, experimental neural control implants, forced indoctrinations, programs to reshape the human mind, to make us more compliant, more malleable. When Earth's diplomats asked about the missing soldiers, they were told classified lost data. But they weren't lost. They were taken. And most never came back. The Council hadn't feared human instability. They had engineered it. When Torin saw the files, he didn't speak for a long time. Eventually, he stood, walked into his private quarters, and sat down in the dark. He had given 30 years to peace, believed in diplomacy, in second chances. But this was something else. This was unforgivable. And now? Now he finally understood why the rage had boiled so deep for so long. Because it wasn't just betrayal, it was violation. The leak hit the galaxy in waves. Helena made sure of it. Hacked council archives, broadcast relays, viral bursts. The truth went everywhere at once. And when the people of the galaxy saw it, when they saw what the council had done to humanity, to its soldiers, to its children, they didn't just condemn it. They rebelled. Council stations were overrun by their own populations. Riots on Terran 9th. Military collapse in the Perda Nexus. Colonies declaring independence not in solidarity, but in shame, refusing to serve a regime that had committed such horrors. The old council was dead. But in its place, a new evil stirred. From the ruins of the shattered core worlds, a single figure emerged. Kareth Zor, former head of security intelligence, now self-declared executor of preservation. He wore no robes, no ceremonial garb, just a steel uniform and a cold smile. The humans, he said in his first broadcast, have exposed a crime. But make no mistake, they are not innocent. They were created to be unstable, to fracture, to burn. He raised his hand, mechanical and gleaming. They are a threat to all, not because of what we did, but because of what they are. His message ended with a single phrase, burned into every major system. Extinction is not vengeance, it is insurance. The executor wasn't rebuilding the council. He was building a war machine, all or nothing, no treaties, no lines drawn, no humans left standing. And so the tide turned again. Humanity, fractured and furious, now faced a monster it had helped create. The accord was vast, but it wasn't united. And Earth, aching, angry, afraid, stood at a crossroads. Were they still fighting for justice, or were they now just fighting to survive? Because what had started as retribution was becoming something darker. Rain fell over New Kyoto like memory, cold, endless, and heavy. Torin Vex stood under it without an umbrella. The bronze memorial wall before him shimmered with water, the names running like ink in the storm. But they weren't fading. They never would. He reached out, touched one, Ensign Kira Vex, his daughter, disappeared during a joint training operation. One of thousands the council had marked as MIA. Now he knew better. She'd been taken. Used. He hadn't cried when the war started, but he cried now, silently, as the names stared back at him. Because the war was no longer about betrayal. It was about what came next. Behind him, Nyla Varen waited in the rain. "We have a problem," she said softly. He wiped his face. "Just one?" She handed him a datapad. Her eyes didn't leave his. One of the subjects from Galen Prime came back. They called her Vex now, They didn't know her real name. She didn't remember it, but her blood was human. And her body? Altered. Council tech fused with experimental bio-weaving, a living weapon, created in silence, designed to be obedient. But she wasn't. Not anymore. They found her on a derelict freighter, drifting beyond the Lurian wastes. Every bone in her body had been broken and reknit. Her nervous system? Augmented to the edge of collapse. And her mind was a battlefield. Sometimes she screamed in languages she didn't know. Other times, she recited council command codes in perfect cadence, as if she'd never left their labs. But mostly, she stayed quiet. Watching. Waiting. Vex was brought to a secure Accord facility in orbit around Titanus. Dr. Arlen Greaves, Earth's leading cyber neural specialist, took one look at her and nearly collapsed. They didn't just program her, he whispered. They layered her. She could be calm one moment, savage the next, memories overwritten, reflexes that responded before thought. She was a ghost of 1,000 erased soldiers. But when she finally spoke, her voice was quiet, fragile. Do I belong to anyone? Torin watched from behind the glass. No, he said softly. Not anymore. Word of Vex's return spread fast. Some hailed her as a miracle, proof that those lost could be reclaimed. Others called her a weapon, dangerous, unstable, a council sleeper cell waiting to snap. Captain Juno Thane sent a message to Torin directly. You're risking everything for a ticking time bomb. If she turns, don't expect mercy. Torin didn't respond, but Helena Voss did. She tracked down Juno's vessel in the outer rim, boarded it without permission, and faced the rogue captain, unarmed. You think revenge makes you strong, Helena said. Juno laughed bitterly. I think mercy makes you weak. Number mercy is control. Mercy is knowing you could end them, and choosing not to. Juno's eyes narrowed. You keep preaching that, Voss. Let's see if it saves you when the Executor finds Earth. Meanwhile, Kareth Zor, Executor of Preservation, was building his fleet in silence. He didn't need volunteers. He had drones, bio-cloned strike legions, AI fleets stripped of conscience, and something worse. He had found the deep codes, the root genetic fail-safes planted in the first human council hybridization experiments. Fail-safes buried in the DNA of Vex. And maybe thousands more, a hidden signal, a switch. He didn't need to beat humanity. He just had to corrupt it. Back on Earth, Vex began to draw. No one gave her pencils. She made them, carved from broken meal trays and melted wall panels. She drew faces. Dozens of them. Smiling, screaming, some with council eyes, some with human hands curled into fists. When Torin entered her cell, she looked up slowly. They're coming, she whispered. His breath caught. Who? She touched one of the drawings. It was a face he recognized. His daughter. Kira Vex. Alive? Or just a memory woven into the shattered mind of a broken soldier? Either way, the war wasn't over. It was just beginning. The image haunted him. Her face, Kira's face, drawn by someone who had never known her. The lines were jagged but unmistakable, the curve of her cheek, the faint scar near her left brow. A detail no records carried, not even the military archives. Only her father would know. Torin Vex had stared at that drawing all night. Now he stared into the cold vacuum of space, the resolve coasting quietly beyond the rings of Titanus. Nyla stood beside him, silent. She'd learned not to ask the obvious questions. Eventually Torin spoke. She's alive. Nyla didn't flinch. Or Vex was programmed to make you believe she is. Same outcome, Torin said, voice low. I have to find her. Deep within the Terran Accord's intelligence division, they traced the origin of the genetic signal Vex responded to. fragments of neural frequencies tucked into old code, buried in planetary emissions. Not just tech, but biology. The source? Carshell's Cradle, a former council facility, off the grid, hidden behind the collapsed Singari Belt, a region so unstable most ships wouldn't risk flying through it. It was a graveyard of lost fleets. But if Kira, or others like her, were there, Torin would risk the hell. Meanwhile, Executor Zor's fleet continued to grow. He didn't recruit, he harvested. Every fallen world left behind biotech hybrids, dead flesh with dormant protocols, corpses that became soldiers, minds overridden by machine logic and deep code council programming. The galaxy whispered a new name for them, the Silenced. Vex felt them in her dreams, their pain, their hunger, their emptiness, and in those dreams, she saw Kira, not in chains, not in pain, but leading them, eyes glowing, voice serene. She wasn't broken, she was in control. Torin led the strike force himself, against every Accord advisor's warnings. Nyla insisted on coming, so did Vex. No one knew why she volunteered. She just looked Torin in the eye and said, "I'll know if she's one of us." The jump through the Singari Belt nearly tore the fleet apart. Only 3 ships made it through. Carshell's Cradle was still there, an obsidian husk floating in the black, half buried in asteroid wreckage. No life signs, no communications, just the signal, pulsing, calling. They entered cautiously. Inside, silence, then whispers, recorded screams, flashes of movement, echoes of memories that didn't belong to them. Vex walked ahead, unfazed. She was remembering. They found the chamber deep in the core, a massive hall lined with stasis pods, hundreds of them. Inside, humans, all altered, not asleep, not dead, suspended. And in the center, hooked into a throne of neural conduits, was Kira Vex. Older, changed. Her eyes opened as Torin stepped forward. She didn't blink. "Father," she said, not with warmth, but with cold, clinical certainty. "Why?" he whispered. She tilted her head. "Because they broke me, and then rebuilt me. But they didn't finish." She rose slowly, metal cables detaching from her spine like shed skin. "I did the rest myself." Torin's voice cracked. "Kira, come with me. We can fix this." She stepped forward. "There's nothing to fix." And behind her, the stasis pods lit up, activating. Nyla reached for her weapon. "It's a trap." "No," Kira said. "It's a resurrection." Vex stepped between them. "I know what they did to you," she said. Kira looked at her, something flickering behind her cold eyes. "Then you know why they all have to fall. They're not all guilty. They're all complicit." Vex hesitated. For the first time, something changed in her posture. Her voice softened. "Then what are we?" For a second, Kira faltered. That was all Torin needed. He stepped forward, placing his hand over hers. "You're still my daughter." Tears welled in his eyes. "You're not a weapon. You're not a prophecy. You're Kira." Her lips parted. But before she could answer, the alarm blared. A message, pulsing from the edge of the system. Zor had found them, and he wasn't alone. The stars burned red. The Executor had arrived. His fleet spilled from the void like a plague, thousands of ships, faceless and flawless, formed for a single purpose: extinction. The Silenced led the charge, and at their center was Zor's flagship, a black shard of obsidian that pulsed with the stolen code of 1,000 broken minds. Inside Carshell's Cradle, alarms howled. Torin stood between his daughter and the end of everything. Kira's hand trembled in his. She could feel the signal screaming in her head. The failsafe Zor had designed to rip her will away, to fold her mind back into the machine. The others in stasis pods had already begun to stir, some screaming, others whispering in council tongues long dead. "I can stop them," she said, her voice cracking. "I can shut it down. All of it." Torin searched her eyes. "At what cost?" Kira glanced back at the throne, the cables, the interface built to consume a mind entirely. "I won't survive it," she whispered. Above the station, Nyla and Vex fought side by side in the hangar as the first wave of silence broke through. Vex moved like something half-human, half-nightmare. Silent, swift, efficient. She didn't scream. She didn't bleed. But each enemy she felled brought a flicker of pain to her face. Nyla noticed it. "You're remembering," she said during a lull. Vex nodded, eyes haunted. "Bits and pieces. Flashes. I think I was someone once. Still are." They didn't have time to finish the thought. The hull trembled. Zor's ship had locked weapons. Torin stood before Kira as she connected to the core. "I won't let you die like this," he said, voice cracking. "I already died," she whispered. "Back on that council ship, I only came back because they made me. But now I get to choose what I become." She smiled faintly. "I want to become free." He wanted to pull her back, to hold her like the child she once was. But she was no child. Not anymore. Kira took her place on the throne. Zor's voice echoed across every comm in the system. "You cannot hide behind broken children and ruined ideals. You were made to burn. I'm simply lighting the match." Torin activated the final phase of the Accord's countersignal, linked to Kira's neural interface. Vex patched in from the hangar, her own mind serving as a stabilizer. The strain showed. Blood trickled from her nose, but she didn't stop. The station shook violently, then silence. Kira's eyes glowed bright white. The signal reversed. Across the fleet of silenced confusion bloomed, a fractured whisper. Memories, faces, music, laughter, grief. The implanted programming cracked. One by one, the silenced began to resist. Not all, but enough. Some ships turned on Zor's command fleet. Others went still, drifting with ghost crews now screaming in confusion. Zor, seeing his machine unravel, gave the final order. "Glass the system. Burn it all." But Kira was faster. She opened the core, flooded every relay with raw signal. The backlash shredded her neurons. Her body seized in the throne, muscles tearing under the force of her own liberation. And then, a flash, a ripple. Every ship within 10 light minutes of Carshell froze. Their power grids fried. Systems failed. Minds broke free, or were silenced permanently. Zor's flagship cracked in half. The executor's face never changed, even as the fire swallowed him. On the surface of the cradle, Torin held his daughter's body. She was limp, but her eyes still faintly glowed. A flicker, a trace, a smile. Then nothing. He didn't cry. He couldn't. There was too much awe in him, too much pride. She had saved them. Not just humanity. Everyone. Weeks later, the Accord met in open council. Worlds once enemies now stood together. Rebuilding would take generations. The scars, longer. But the truth was clear. The age of the council was over. And from the ashes of betrayal, something new had begun. A compact built not on dominance or fear, but on choice. Vex stood at the edge of Earth's orbit, watching the sunrise from the deck of the Resolve. She didn't speak often. But when Nyla joined her, she nodded. "You ever figure out who you were?" Nyla asked. Vex shook her head. "Number, but I know who I want to be." Nyla smiled. "That's more than most." As for Torin, he kept walking, from system to system, spreading Kira's name, her truth, not as a warning, but as a legacy, because humanity's rage had once boiled over, But it was our will that endured, and in the end, it wasn't vengeance that saved us. It was forgiveness. They called it New Canaan, a peaceful human colony settled on the edge of known space. For 50 years, it thrived. Families grew, crops flourished, and even in the harsh alien environment, humans did what they always did: adapt. It was the poster child for interstellar peace. Until one night, it disappeared. No warning, no distress signal, just silence. At first, the United Human Alliance thought it was a comms failure. Satellites went dark all the time. But when scout ships arrived days later, what they found made seasoned commanders vomit in their suits. New Canaan was gone. Not destroyed, not burning, just emptied. Buildings were melted like wax. Skeletons, still seated at dinner tables, eyes wide in terror. Entire lakes had boiled away. The soil carried residual radiation signatures no human technology could produce. There was no war declaration, no demands, no survivors, just a single symbol, burned into the side of what was once the colony's central tower, a circle with 3 slashes. It didn't match any known race, but the message was clear. We were here. You are next. The human response? Cold, fast, and louder than any diplomat expected. Within 2 weeks, the entire fleet mobilized. Earth stopped exporting food. Mars shut down tourism. The moons of Jupiter paused all civilian transit. Every industry retooled itself overnight. Even the civilian megacorps surrendered their fleets to the UHA. Humanity had seen war before, but never like this. They didn't just want justice. They wanted vengeance. Admiral Rhea Salen stood aboard the flagship Vindicator, watching 700,000 warships organize in orbit over Saturn. The screen in front of her looked more like an ocean of metal than a fleet. Fighters, dreadnoughts, orbital carriers, every class of warship, big and small. Some had never even been tested. Prototypes were thrown into battle readiness without trials. Humanity wasn't waiting. Rhea clenched her jaw as she reviewed the last footage taken from New Canaan. A child's voice whispered through the comms static. "Mommy, what's that in the sky?" Then nothing. "Ma'am," her comm officer said, "the fleet awaits your command." She turned toward him. "Send the message." Seconds later, across hundreds of systems, one simple message echoed through space. "One of ours was erased, so we come with everything." They called it Operation Exodus Storm, the biggest mobilization in galactic history. Thousands of planets paused their lives as their children, parents, and leaders joined the fleet. Even alien allies advised restraint. The Drax, the peacebrokers of the Orion Spiral, sent envoys. This could ignite a sector-wide war, they warned. Rhea had only one response. Then let it burn. As the fleet surged into subspace, no one knew where the enemy was. No name, no coordinates, just that symbol. But humanity had a saying, born from centuries of survival. You kill one of us, we'll wipe out your bloodline. The first real lead came a week later, from a shattered probe drifting near the Kuiper verge. It had recorded a faint energy trail, matching the residuals found on New Canaan. The same radiation, the same subspace ripple, the same haunting hum. It led to an uncharted system, one that didn't exist on any star map. They called it Ghost Sector 9. It was time to hunt. The fleet emerged from subspace at the edge of Ghost Sector 9 like a tide of steel and fury. The system was dim, its star a dull red dwarf barely emitting enough light to pierce the surrounding dust. Planets here were dead or dying, but that wasn't the unsettling part. It was the silence. No communications, no EM signals, no signs of life or unlife, just dead rock and cold space. Admiral Rhea Salen stood on the bridge of Vindicator, watching as the scouting units broke formation and swept the inner system. Her nerves were steady, but her thoughts churned. Something about this place felt wrong. Too perfect. Commander Ishan Reeve, her second-in-command, appeared beside her. "Ma'am, scouts report something orbiting the third planet. Not natural. Could be artificial." She narrowed her eyes. "Get closer. No solo ships. I want full fleet support within 10,000 kilometers." The order went out, and hundreds of warships moved in tandem like a single organism. As they neared the object, sensors began to light up with confusion. The readings didn't make sense. "It's a station," Reeve said slowly, "but not one of ours. No design matches. Materials are— What the hell?" The object looked ancient, circular, half buried in the atmosphere of the dead planet it orbited. It pulsed faintly with some kind of bluish energy, flickering like a dying heartbeat. It was the size of a small moon, but no thrusters, no visible weapons. Then something clicked. The symbol, 3 slashes in a circle, was carved into the center of the structure, thousands of meters across, visible even from orbit. Rhea took a breath. "There they are." "Should we fire, ma'am?" "No," she said. "We want answers." She dispatched a squadron of elite Marines and AI-assisted infiltration bots. They boarded the structure an hour later. Their feed came in choppy, distorted by the interference surrounding the station. The interior was hollow and cold, like a tomb. Strange markings lined the walls, glyphs that shimmered slightly as the cameras passed by. No corpses, no signs of a fight, just echoes. And then something moved, not in front of the Marines, but behind them. The transmission caught a blur, slithering, tall, not quite bipedal, and fast. "Something's in here," one of the Marines whispered, raising his plasma rifle. "Permission to engage?" Rhea was about to respond when the screen exploded into static. The entire squad was gone in 5 seconds. Not dead, cut off, their signal severed like it had been sliced. The room fell into stunned silence. Not even the AI could re-establish connection. Then came a new signal from the station itself. It played back the last 5 seconds of the Marine's feed, repeating, over and over, until a voice layered itself over the loop, deep, echoing, not quite synthetic, but not alive. "You followed the trail. Now you see. We ended your colony to save the rest." Rhea stiffened. "Who the hell are you?" No response, just static. Then, "Your species expands without wisdom, consumes without balance. You are infection." She clenched her fist. "You call us infection after what you did on New Canaan?" "You were warned. You never listen." Then the screen went black again. No more voice, no more loop. The station returned to silence. Rhea turned to the fleet. "Ready all batteries. I want that station destroyed." "Ma'am, if we fire—" "They started this. I'll finish it." Moments later, 10,000 warships opened fire at once. The explosion lit up the dead planet's sky like a new sun. When the fire faded, the station was gone. Vaporized. But deep in the void behind the wreckage, something stirred. It hadn't been a base. It had been a gate, and now it was open. The stars around them began to shift. It started as a subtle distortion, pinpricks of light blinking too fast, as if the universe itself was glitching. Then the sensors started to scream. Gravitational anomalies flared. Subspace currents reversed. Ships across the fleet began reporting strange heat spikes, systems failing for no reason, AI units freezing mid-command. And then it arrived. A ripple in the void, like someone had thrown a stone into the fabric of space, and out of that ripple came the first vessel. It wasn't a ship, not really. It was a shape, blacker than the void, wrong in its geometry, shifting even as you looked at it. Massive, quiet, and ancient, it drifted forward slowly, almost lazily. But every human on every bridge, even those hardened by war, felt it. Fear, not just tactical fear or concern for survival, instinctual fear, like a rabbit under a hawk's shadow. "What in God's name is that?" whispered Reeve. Rhea didn't answer. She couldn't. For the first time in her career, she had no words. Only her gut told her the truth. This was what killed New Canaan. Then the gate pulsed again. Not one, not two, but hundreds of those ships emerged, each one different in shape, but the same in feel. Silent, watching. And behind them, deeper in the gate, a structure began forming, not drifting through but building itself, reality bending to make room. It looked like a cathedral, or maybe a hive, towering and jagged, growing by the second. One of the science vessels cracked the mystery first. Dr. Elian Vass, a xenotech genius from the Saturn Institute, patched into Rhea's comms. His voice was shaking. "They're not ships in the conventional sense. They're living." "Living?" she snapped. "You're saying those are organisms?" "Not exactly. They're somewhere between biology and engineering. Grown, not built. But here's the worst part. They weren't coming through that gate. They were waiting. Waiting! For humanity to open it. That station hadn't been a weapon. It had been a lock. And now it was broken. The enemy made the first move. One of the black ships blinked, literally disappeared, and reappeared behind a human cruiser. No warning, no time to dodge. The cruiser folded in on itself, as if crushed by a giant, invisible fist. No explosion, just silence and then gone. "All units, return fire!" Rhea barked. "Defensive formations, now!" The sky turned into a furnace. Thousands of human warships lit up with plasma beams, railgun fire, and orbital torpedoes. Space around the gate shimmered with destruction. Several of the alien ships were hit, but none of them fell. Instead, their skin morphed, bending around the blasts like liquid armor. "Hits are ineffective," shouted Tactical. "Repeating, standard ordnance ineffective." "Then hit harder," she growled. "Bring in the Titan class." Moments later, the Titan-class dreadnoughts entered formation, massive ships designed to fight planetary sieges. They charged their main cannons, fusion coils glowing red-hot. "Fire!" The blasts slammed into one of the alien ships dead on. And finally, impact. One of the creatures split in half, shrieking with a sound that wasn't sound. A psychic wave ripped through the fleet, making dozens of officers scream and clutch their heads. But the ship died. It bled light, cracked apart, and imploded. They could be killed. But killing one brought attention. Suddenly, the entire swarm turned as one. No communications, no lights, no noise, just movement. They charged. What followed wasn't a battle. It was a massacre. Human ships blinked out of existence. Whole squadrons disappeared. The black swarm moved like a school of sharks, coordinated and relentless. They weren't machines. They weren't drones. They were something else. Something older. Rhea stood on the bridge, jaw clenched as Vindicator rocked under impact. She refused to flinch. "Hold the line," she whispered. "This isn't New Canaan. We don't run." And still, more of those damn things kept coming through the gate. The fleet was fighting, dying, holding. But somewhere deep in the back of her mind, Rhea knew. This wasn't a war. It was an invasion. And they'd just answered the door. The battlefield was chaos incarnate. Rhea's voice rasped from shouting as orders flew like bullets across every channel. "Pull back to sectors Delta and Epsilon. Cluster fire patterns only. Don't let them isolate you." Vindicator shuddered again. One of the alien ships had tried to phase into it, half merging with the hull, before failing to anchor. It left behind a melted scar, still glowing orange, as if space itself had tried to digest them. Dozens of human ships were already gone. not destroyed in battle, just gone. As if they'd been erased from reality, snatched into whatever abyss these creatures came from. The worst part? Every time a ship vanished, those things screamed, not with sound, but through thought, through pressure, through emotion, grief, rage, ecstasy. They felt it when they killed. They enjoyed it. "We need to fall back," Reeve urged, wiping blood from his temple after a burst console sent shards flying. "We're outgunned, outmaneuvered. This isn't a fight anymore, it's suicide." But Rhea shook her head. "And if we retreat? Let them pour into the rest of the systems? Number we hold. If we go down stalling them." The AI flickered beside her, its voice flickering. "Admiral, incoming transmission, source, unidentified, non-human. It is addressing you by name." She turned slowly. "Play it." The screen flashed, and a face appeared. Or what passed for one. It wasn't like any alien species known. Tall, too tall, head like a sharpened bone blade, body draped in a robe that flickered like dark water. Its eyes were voids, pure black, swirling with faint pinpricks of light. "I am Vela, sir, first herald of the extinguishers." Rhea stared back. "Is that what you call yourselves? You kill billions and name yourselves like gods?" The creature tilted its head. "We name ourselves by function. Yours is to expand, to consume, to spread chaos and heat. We are the correction." She spat. "You're just butchers hiding behind logic." "You are a flame," Velasser said calmly. "We are the rain. One colony was a warning. You answered with 700,000 swords. You should have hidden. You should have begged. But instead you revealed your strength." Rhea's eyes narrowed. "And now you're scared?" "We do not fear, but we now understand what must be done." The image vanished. A moment later, sensors across the fleet flared. From the edges of the system, more gates opened, not one, not 5, 13, each wider than the last, each spitting out more of those nightmare ships. One colony had triggered their wrath. 700,000 warships had summoned their full attention. "Multiple hostiles inbound," Tactical shouted. "We're looking at 10 times our number, maybe more. This is an extermination wave." "No," Rhea murmured. "It's not. It's a test. They want to see if we'll break." She turned to her comms officer. "Get me Admiral Genji on the Mars flank. Patch in Europa Command. Link all remaining fleet captains." The officer blinked. "What are you planning?" Rhea's voice was steel. "We changed the rules." Within minutes, the human fleet restructured. The chaos was replaced by calculation. Fleets linked together into tight webs, overlapping fire zones. Experimental weapons, many not even fully approved for use, were deployed. EMP mines, temporal scramblers, gravitic hooks. Rhea took a gamble and authorized the singularity bomb. They detonated it at the heart of the largest alien cluster, a pocket black hole. It pulled 20 of the enemy ships in instantly, stretching them, warping them, until they collapsed into an invisible pinprick. Silence. For a moment, even the aliens hesitated. The humans fought back harder. Fleet Vanta cut through the left flank, using asteroid debris as moving shields. Jupiter's defense line poured neutron rounds into the enemy's core ranks, slowing their advance. For the first time in hours, the swarm lost ground. On Vindicator, the crew erupted in cheers, but Rhea didn't cheer. Because something was wrong. The gates weren't closing, they were growing. And deep inside one of them, barely visible to the naked eye, a shape moved. Something bigger than all of this. Something the Herald hadn't mentioned. The real threat hadn't arrived yet. This was still the opening act. The gates pulsed like veins in a wounded beast, growing wider, darker, alive with unnatural energy. One by one, the alien warships peeled away from combat, drifting back toward their origin points, not retreating, but repositioning, holding formation, as if something sacred was about to emerge. On every human ship the same sense took hold, a pressure behind the eyes, a bone-deep chill, like the universe itself was watching. Then the stars dimmed. Not gradually, all at once. Every camera feed, every viewport, every piece of external sensor equipment went dark for exactly 13 seconds. When the stars returned, something else came with them. It was not a ship. It was not a station. It was a goddamn wound in reality. The shape was impossible. Too large to be comprehended. It didn't reflect light. It devoured it. A colossal ring, miles thick, rotating in unnatural angles, bending around itself in ways that bent physics. And at its center, a single blinking eye. Not mechanical, not artificial, organic, alive. It stared into the heart of the human fleet, and the human fleet felt it. They didn't need words, didn't need transmissions. The message was burned into their consciousness. We were here before your stars. We watched your cells crawl. We saw your first fire, your first lie, your first war. And now we unmake you. People screamed in unison. Some fell to their knees, babbling. Others clawed at their faces, trying to rip the thought from their skulls. A psychic weapon, pure and unfiltered. No defense, no armor, just ancient, focused contempt. Rhea didn't move. Her eyes bled, her hands trembled. But she stood. She stared into that blinking eye and whispered, "You should have stayed asleep." Behind her, Reeve vomited. The helmsman passed out. The AI stuttered so violently, its voice fractured into static. And yet, Rhea stood, because someone had to. "Send the message," she growled. What message?" Reeve croaked, still dazed. "To Earth, to Mars, to every listening post left on the galactic fringe." She wiped the blood from her nose. "Tell them, the gods have returned, and they're not ours. The battle was now meaningless. The smaller ships, if you could call them that, acted as extensions of this new arrival, like cells in a body. They moved in harmony with the behemoth in the center. They didn't attack directly anymore. They started herding, forcing human ships into clusters, pinning them, boxing them in like cattle before the slaughter. "We're not going to make it," whispered Reeve, "even with everything we've got." "Then we take out something," Rhea said coldly. She brought up the Titan-class fleet manifest. "Order the Titans to charge every singularity bomb they've got. Don't wait for locks. Aim for the center of that thing. Hit the eye. Admiral, that'll draw everything to us. If it doesn't work, it'll be worth dying for." Across the fleet, the Titans roared into final formation. 60 in all, each one holding the power to crack a planet in half. They weren't supposed to be used like this. Not all at once. The energy discharge alone would burn a hole in space-time. But they didn't care anymore. Humanity was past fear. Now it was about dignity. Rhea gave the final order. "Fire!" 60 singularity bombs launched at once. The universe flinched. The weapons screamed through the void, burning holes in gravity as they surged toward the eye. The black ships reacted instantly, screeching forward, intercepting, but too late. Only a handful could intercept the bombs. The rest kept flying, slipping through the cracks, converging toward their target. And then, impact. A brilliant rupture tore across the battlefield. Space howled. Light shattered. Gravity broke. For a single, impossible moment, the eye blinked. And when it opened again, it bled. The god thing screamed without sound, shaking every atom in the sector. Chunks of its impossible body peeled away, disintegrating into clouds of screaming matter. But it did not die. It became angry. And now, it was coming. The scream wasn't a sound, it was a feeling. Every crew member, every soldier, every living human in the fleet felt it echo through their bones. The God Thing's rage was raw and personal. It wasn't just fury at being hurt. It was offended. How dare they? Ships began tearing themselves apart without being touched. Bulkheads twisted inward. Artificial gravity reversed in random spurts. Time itself stuttered around the bleeding monolith. Minutes passed like seconds. Seconds stretched like hours. Rhea's HUD kept flickering between timestamps that made no sense. They'd heard it. And now, it was going to erase them. "All Titans are gone," Reeve whispered, stunned. "They got the shot off, but the countershock, it ripped them apart." "Worth it," Rhea muttered. Her voice was numb. Her mind wasn't. She could feel something in her skull, a presence pressing in, like the eye was trying to crawl inside her thoughts. But she wasn't letting it win. She hadn't come this far to kneel to some ancient parasite playing God. On the fringes of the fleet, a flicker of light erupted. A transmission, encoded, encrypted, military grade. No signature. Rhea squinted. "Who's broadcasting?" The comms officer shook her head. "It's not coming from inside the fleet. It's coming from behind us." More flickers, more signals, then hundreds, thousands, a second fleet, one no one expected. Ghost ships from black budget programs, covert Earth Guard arsenals, independent Mars warbands, exiled AI colonies, even criminal warlords from the outer belt. They weren't here out of loyalty or hope. They were here because they realized the same truth as everyone else. If this thing wins, nothing survives. Rhea's mouth twitched. Not a smile, something colder. "They heard us," she said. The transmission opened, a calm voice filtering through. "This is Commander Grax of the Acheron Ring. You wanted hell? We brought our own." The new fleet opened fire. Weapons no one had officially acknowledged. Tech that had been outlawed. Pulse lances that tore the skin off reality. Data viruses transmitted directly into enemy minds. And most terrifying of all, humanity's first aberrants. The result of failed gene-splicing programs. Soldiers bred not just for war, but for cosmic confrontation. Their ships were alive. Their minds wired directly into the controls. They sang to each other in frequencies that made lesser men vomit blood. They charged headfirst into the storm. For the first time since the God Thing arrived, the tide shifted again. The black ships faltered. Not stopped, but confused. The arrival of new variables, unpredictable ones, seemed to disrupt the unity of their swarm. "This is our window," Rhea snapped. "All remaining carriers, launch everything, every drone, every mech, every fighter, swarm tactics. Blind it, pin it, we're buying time." "For what?" Reeve asked. Rhea turned toward the starboard bay. "For me." The bridge fell silent. "You're not serious." "I'm taking Vindicator's core," she said flatly. "We've got a fully charged antimatter heart and a neural link I can hijack. I'm going in." "That's suicide." "Better than extinction." The bridge crew tried to argue, but Rhea had already moved. She ran through the flickering corridors of Vindicator, heart pounding but focused. Every footstep echoed with finality. She wasn't trying to win. She was trying to hurt it enough that someone else could. As the hangar doors opened, she stepped into the drop pod, locking the neural link into place. The pod wasn't designed for this kind of mission. No weapons, no shields, just speed and pain and hope. The countdown started. The rails heated up. "Goodbye, Reeve," she whispered. "If we don't make it, tell Earth." The pod fired. They were worth dying for. She shot forward like a bullet, dodging ships, debris, and bursts of light that didn't obey physics. The eye loomed ahead. Enormous. Open. Hungry. Rhea activated the core. 17 seconds until detonation. The eye noticed her, She felt its gaze twist her mind, flood her head with images. Alternate histories, false hopes, dead futures. It was trying to break her will. But Rhea smiled, blood dripping from her ears. "You don't get to win," she growled. 10 seconds. She locked the coordinates, right into the center of the eye. 5. She screamed through clenched teeth, holding her mind together by sheer force of will. 1. The pod hit. And then, light. At first there was nothing. No sound, no light, not even darkness, just absence. Then came the shockwave. It didn't travel like an ordinary blast. It didn't ripple across space, it fractured it. The moment the antimatter core collided with the center of the eye, the god thing's presence vanished, ripped away like rotten roots from soil. Across the battlefield, the alien swarm faltered. Entire clusters froze mid-maneuver, drifting like corpses with no puppet strings. Others convulsed, spasming wildly, colliding with one another as if suddenly blind and afraid. And in the heart of that fading light, Rhea's pod didn't exist anymore. She didn't either. Not entirely. She felt her mind stretching across a plane that didn't obey the rules she was born into, a space between dimensions. She didn't breathe here. She didn't bleed. She only felt. Voices whispered, not alien, not divine, human. Thousands, maybe millions of voices echoing in this strange in-between, familiar, ancient, frightened, brave. She didn't understand the language, but she knew them. The hopes of forgotten ancestors, the rage of silenced warriors, the desperation of those who died building everything humanity now stood on. They were with her. She wasn't gone. She'd become something else. Back in real space, Reeve stood on the Vindicator's bridge, staring at the monitors. For a long moment, there was only static. Then, one by one, screens flickered back to life. The god thing was gone. No eye, no ring, no unnatural bending of space, just a wound in the stars, slowly healing. A stunned silence settled over the fleet. The remaining black ships shuddered, lost without their central intelligence. They didn't retreat. They didn't fight. They simply drifted, hollow and directionless. And humanity? They did what no one thought they could. They survived. Grax's voice cracked through the channel, hoarse with disbelief. Did she do it? She did more than that, Reeve whispered. She didn't just kill it, she woke us up. Woke us up? Reeve turned to the crew. His eyes, red and swollen, held something new. Not sadness, not shock, reverence. "We're not just fighting to survive anymore," he said. "We're fighting because now we know what's out there, and we know we can win." For days afterward, the fleet searched for Rhea's remains, her pod, any trace of her. They found nothing, no body, no signal, no debris. But the weird thing was, she still spoke, only in flashes, flickers of thought during jumps between systems, brief feelings of calm amid chaos. Moments when captains about to give up suddenly felt strength return to their limbs, like someone was whispering, "Hold the line." And when they mapped the crater where the god thing had died, it formed a shape, not a perfect one, jagged, raw, but unmistakable, a human handprint, burned into space itself. Back on Earth, they turned it into a symbol, not of war, not of vengeance, but of defiance, a reminder that even in the face of cosmic horror, one person could stand their ground and say, "No." The war wasn't over. New enemies would come. The void was vast, and now it knew humanity was awake. But from that day forward, the galaxy whispered a name it would never forget, Rhea Talon, the woman who faced a god and made it bleed. 17 years later, in orbit over the exoplanet Helios Prime, a child was born aboard a research vessel named Echo of Talon. She did not cry, not out of fear or shock, but because, according to the onboard AI, she had a resting heart rate like a soldier mid-battle and eyes that didn't blink until the third day. Strange, yes. But then again, strange was normal now. Ever since the collapse, what historians now called the moment Admiral Rhea Talon destroyed the old god, humanity had evolved in more ways than biology could track. A new military division had formed, the Celestial Guard. Not just soldiers, but guardians against the unexplained. Every cadet wore a pin over their heart, engraved with a simple icon, a bleeding eye, and a handprint. On the rim worlds, stories spread about voices in the dark, guiding travelers home from lost jumps, warning of systems about to collapse. These weren't myths. Entire stations recorded last-minute system corrections that saved thousands of lives. No one sent them. They just happened. And always, after the miracle, the same message was found encoded in the nav logs. We are not alone. But neither are you. Back on Earth, a memorial stood tall in the heart of New Geneva. It wasn't a statue, because no one could agree on what Rhea would have wanted to look like in stone. Instead, it was a void, a circular obsidian arch with nothing inside. Just space. And when you walked through it, nothing changed. Except you. Veterans swore they felt it. That presence, not divine, not alien, just human, unbreakable, watching, protecting. The girl born on Echo of Talon would grow up to command fleets of her own. And on her first campaign, against a new species that had devoured 3 mining colonies before Earth could respond, she didn't hesitate. She ordered her ships to surround the invaders, cut off their escape, and send one message before opening fire. The same message Rhea had sent when the first colony fell. One colony was destroyed. So we answered with 700,000 warships. And this time, the universe listened. Humanity had become a warning, not because of its power, but because of its will. Because somewhere out in the stars, even if no one could see her, Rhea Talon still stood watch.